to me on this camera. Right then. So we were talking about the peppered moth then, and we've got the idea that there's these two varieties of it. We've got a light coloured one, and we've got a dark coloured one. Well,
the fact that that's got one bigger wing than the other.
If you were trying to describe a moth to somebody, how would you describe it? I'd say, oh, it looks a bit like a butterfly, but not pretty. They're like evil butterflies. So we've got two different varieties here. How are these varieties produced? Why is this one different from this one? Because it's got different alleles from it. Yeah. So let's try and suggest what alleles the white one had. I think the black one is a mutant form. I think once upon a time they were all white. So suggest for me an allele for the white one.
A dominant allele?
Dominant allele. Give me a letter that we could use for the dominant allele.
W.
A W. Why would we not use a W?
They look the same.
They look the same, yeah. Big W and a little W look the same. Go on then.
M for moth.
They look the same too.
They look the same too.
N.
N. Okay.
That's not very good for a moth.
Big M's on.
Yeah, the
straight
pointy
edges
edges
and
of round.
edges.
Not in everyone's handwriting.
Nah, some people do, some people don't. I'm with Emma on this. It's easy, you know, in an exam to get confused. So N equals white, and then little n would equal black. Okay. So give me the genotype of this moth.
Homozygous.
Homozygous little n.
Recessive.
Okay, homozygous recessive. So this one is. Give me the genotype of this one.
Homozygous. Sorry, I didn't know who was
So
going to
it could be homozygous dominant. Heterozygous dominant. Okay, would both produce white moths, right? How many dominant alleles would be present in a population where all the moths were black? None. So we could plot the frequency of these two alleles in our population, or we could plot the frequency of the different genotypes. So we've got homozygous dominant, we've got homozygous, we've got heterozygous, and we've got homozygous recessive. Yeah. Now, if we live in an area that's heavily smoke polluted, and we've got a histogram showing the numbers of our different genotypes. So we've got homozygous dominant, heterozygous, and heterozygous recessive. This is a very heavily polluted area. What would we expect that histogram to look like?
Bell-shaped.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would you like to come and draw it on the board for me?
No.
No. I don't think it would be bell-shaped.
Would it just sort of go up a bit slowly?
Is it a bar chart?
Yeah, bar chart.
You'd have more of the homozygous recessive.
You would. You'd have more of the homozygous recessive. So we'd have large bar there. What about these two?
A bit less.
Less of a double M, the homozygous.
Do you think less of them?
Mm-hmm.
What about this one in the middle? Middle amount? Why middle amount?
Got both. Dominant and recessive.
Okay. Why would that give them an advantage over that one? What do they both look like?
Oh, they're still both white, aren't they?
What, them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're white?
Yeah.
No, they are. Okay. So they both be the same because they're both experiencing the same selection pressure because they both look the same. Yeah. So it would look like that. What would the frequency of alleles look like in a non-polluted area?
The opposite?
It'd look the opposite, wouldn't it? So. Something like that, or even less of those maybe. Yeah, something like that. So can you see in these two different populations there's a different frequency of alleles? Yeah. Now evolution is about the frequency of alleles changing over time and enough of the alleles having different frequencies so that the moths look so different from each other that they won't interbreed with each other anymore. Because what happens when the population of black moths interbreeds with the population of white moths? What would the offspring look like?
White.
They would look like white, right? And over time, they kept interbreeding. If there was no selection pressure for the black allele, eventually we might expect that allele to decline in frequency in the population, right? But we'd certainly expect the phenotype to decline in frequency because it's a recessive allele. Yeah. Now, my knowledge of the biology of moths is not the best, so I'm not entirely sure whether this is a recessive allele that causes that. I know the black form was the mutant variety, but I don't know whether it was a recessive allele. It could have been a dominant mutation. Okay, this is a good example of how you'd expect the frequency of alleles to be different from one area to the next because of the different selection pressures. So when you're talking about black moths and white moths and you're talking about them getting eaten and stuff like that and killed and going on to survive, you need to be talking about that in terms of selection pressure. If it's a white moth living in an industrial area, resting on the barks of trees which have been blackened by soot, then you need to be saying there's a selection pressure on it, and then you need to be talking about the frequency of alleles that causes the white phenotype would decline in that area.